a former 3-time MLB All-Star and a current analyst at the MLB Network, Dan Plesac.
Jason, if you want to do this again, postseason edition, you have my number. You call me. We'll get that done.
We are here, everybody. It's time to preview the MLB postseason. And today we are joined by MLB Network Analyst Dan Plesac to do it. Dan, welcome to the show.
Oh, it's so nice, man. You took me up on it. I told you, hey, when the postseason comes around, Chase, call me back. You called me right back. Let's do it.
Let's do it. This is awesome. We were just talking before this Mets-Braves game that's going on currently. Oh, my goodness. What a game breakdown. What do you think of this? Who's going to make the playoffs out of these guys?
Okay, I was taping a show at MLB Network that's going to air at 8 o'clock tonight, the all-MLB team, right? It's 3-0. I'm driving in my car. Schwellenbach goes out for the 8th inning, gives up a double. They take him out of the game, a knock, a hit, a knock. Next thing you know, a Nimmo 3-run homer. It's 6-3. Mets are winning, right? Going to the bottom of the 8th. So they bring in Diaz. He forgets to cover first base. A couple of hits later, the Braves take the lead 7-6. And guess what? Francisco Lindor answers back with a 2-run bomb. The Mets are now leading. What a game.
Really, it has been remarkable to watch. Now, before we really preview this MLB postseason with the way that the bracket is looking right now, can you break down if there's anything new on your end? If there's any shows coming up, how we can view your content?
Well, I tell you what, I'm going to be on MLB Network most of the time doing pre- and post-game shows. So I'm going to be on late at night from like 11 a.m. to 12 p.m. till midnight, like going through what happened during the course of the game. And so I've got it. This is like my crazy time of the year, Chase. This is when I've got to watch games all day, talk about them all day and all night. But when you start getting tired in September and you're thinking like, boy, this baseball season is long. Then all of a sudden the calendar is rolling over. Tomorrow will be October 1st. This is the best time of the year to work in the baseball industry. The games that like this Mets Braves game is insane. One of the top 5 games I've ever watched. Everything on the line. One of these two teams, they win. They're in the postseason. The Diamondbacks are sitting in Arizona right now. They're watching in the clubhouse with their bags packed. So now they have to hope the Mets or whoever wins this one wins game 2. That way they're in. So if the Mets and the Braves split, the Diamondbacks, they've got all their suitcases. They're watching at the ballpark. If the Mets win game 1, the Braves win game 2, the Diamondbacks go home. A lot of crazy scenarios.
It really is. And, when we talk, the NL wildcard was really insane. It has been throughout the entire summer. But we thought, okay, maybe this craziness will die down. It hasn't. It has stayed this really crazy environment the entire year. However, I feel like we have seen Arizona, New York, and Atlanta kind of take that jump above everyone else.
They have. This has been the craziest baseball season when you think about it. The Houston Astros were the worst team in baseball. They were 10 games behind the Seattle Mariners in the middle of June, 10 back, and their schedule was horrible May going into June. They played nothing but teams over 500. What do? They go on a great run. The Mariners go in the toilet. All of a sudden, they flip it. The Astros win the division. The Mariners played themselves in it, played themselves out of it. Then you've got a team like the Tigers. Like they traded their second best pitcher at the deadline, right, Jack Flaherty, to the Dodgers because they thought they were done looking at 2025. They go on a great run and go 31-11 the last 42 games. They're in it. They're dangerous. I'm going to tell you why they're dangerous. They might have the best starting pitcher in the baseball right now, Tarik Skubal. If you don't know who he is, if you're watching Chase and I, this guy is something else, and he gives them a big edge.
He really does. I personally, as an Orioles fan, I think you remember from last time, I do represent Baltimore Orange, but I was kind of afraid as an Orioles fan that we would have to face Detroit, and we're talking about a 0.2% chance of making the playoffs for August 10th. You trade your second best ace, and all of a sudden you go on this crazy run. The offense has been clicking, the pitching has been clicking. Honestly, this is one of my questions for you because last year we saw 2 cold wildcard teams going into the playoffs. Texas and Arizona end up making the World Series. Now this year we see a lot of hot wildcard teams, one of which is Detroit. Do you think they could go or they could win some gold for wildcard, find their way to an ALCS or World Series or any other team?
I do because their bullpen has been so good the last month and a half, right? Their bullpen has pitched more innings the second half of the season than any team in baseball. So their starting pitching outside of Skubal is very average. Skubal's great. They rely on their bullpen. This is the problem. we just assume, like, when you're rolling guys in out of the bullpen, that they're all going to say, like, if the Tigers' plan is outside of Skubal, their starter gives them 5 good innings, then they're going to just go reliever after reliever. The problem is you just always assume that next reliever you're going to bring in is going to pitch a scoreless inning. So the only thing that can happen is one of those guys doesn't pitch well, and that plan goes out the window. That's why I think, if you're going to ask me right now, the most dangerous teams going into the playoffs, I don't know what's going to happen. This Braves-Mets game is living proof. As bad as the Astros were early, I like their pitching right now. Framber Valdez has been really good. I thought when they got Kikuchi from the Blue Jays, that was a big hit. Hunter Brown has been really good. I like their starting pitching. Then you look at the Orioles. I don't know where they'd be without Zach Eflin. They didn't acquire him. They'd be in trouble right now. So you got
It's
Burns
funny
and
because
Eflin.
we talked back in July and we were thinking, okay, right, the Orioles did not really win a World Series if Grayson Rodriguez doesn't step up, and all of a sudden Zach Eflin becomes that starting pitcher too for Baltimore.
Absolutely. And I think if I look at this, I like the Phillies because Aaron Nola's really solid, right? Zach Wheeler, one of the best pitchers in baseball. Christopher Sanchez is throwing the ball well. So I like the Phillies starting pitching. I really like the Astros starting pitching. And it's really funny. I look at this Yankees team. They were the best team in baseball going into middle part of May, right? And then they fell apart. But now all of a sudden, I'm starting to like the Yankees a little bit more right now. Garrett Cole's last 2 have been great. They've got some issues in the back end of that bullpen. I don't know what they're going to do with Clay Holmes if he's going to close games. But I think the Yankees went from being really good to really average to being really good again. If you told me right now my life depended on it to pick 2 teams who I think are going to get to the World Series, I don't feel confident, but my 2 teams would be the Phillies and the Houston Astros. But I'm not saying that with a whole lot of confidence.
Yeah, it honestly is crazy right now what is happening. So tell me, you have repeat those 2 teams, I'm sorry?
Right. I mean, this postseason. You know what? I wasn't a big fan of the wild card when this thing started, right? I was from that old school, win the division, you get in. But I got to tell you, what we saw the last couple of weeks of the season, like the Tigers would have been dead and buried. They'd have been out of it. Look at the Orioles, like they fell way behind the Yankees at the end. The key is this, Chase. You try to figure it out. I don't know what the right method is. Do you want to be one of those wild card teams that plays right down to the end? That way you feel like you're battle tested and you're ready. Or do you want to rest your players? History's shown us the last couple of years, the teams that have done the best are the teams that have to play all the way to 1 game 62.
Right.
But I think there's something about the rest. But the wild card has been a rousing success in the game of baseball. Because, Chase, you got to understand, and I know you do, you follow sports. It's real easy when you get into the middle of September. College football starts, the NFL starts. And if your team's out of it, you kind of forget about baseball. There were so many teams. The Mariners were in it. The Twins were in it. The Tigers were in it. The Orioles were in it. Then you go on the National League side, the Phillies, the Braves, and the Diamondbacks. There were like 8 markets that were fully vested all the way to the end. And if you go back 10 or 12 years ago, those 5 of those 6 teams, nobody would care anymore. Crazy. It's just crazy.
This MLB season, I think, has been one of the weirder ones, but also one of the better ones in recent history, just because of how much chaos there has been. Were there any teams that you thought were going to make the playoffs that you were shocked to see? I don't know if you want to see the collapse, but not get to that point.
I'd say a team that I think a lot of teams in the American League are lucky that they didn't get in. The Seattle Mariners, without question, have the best starting pitching in all of baseball. Their 5 guys, nobody in baseball matches up with their 5. This is the 3rd year in a row. Really, I would say 2. This is the 2nd year in a row that the Mariners wasted the best starting pitching in the game of baseball because they couldn't hit. They just did not hit. They made a managerial change. They brought in Dan Wilson to take over a few weeks ago. They played better. They got up to such a great start. They handed it right back. Then they hit a swoon after the All-Star break. Maybe the change that Dan Wilson was a little too late. Maybe they should have done it sooner. The Mariners, to me, were a team that was built to play in the postseason because of their starting pitching, but they simply didn't hit. On the flip side, you have the Mets. I didn't see this offense coming from the Mets. I didn't. I'll be perfectly honest with you. They started the year slow. Lindor got off to a miserable start the first 4 weeks. He carried this team in May all the way till his back started acting up on him a week ago, but he hit the big home run this afternoon. The Mets can hit. They can flat out hit. They score runs. They've hit good pitching all year long. So I don't know what the secret is, Chase. Do you want to be a team that's built with good pitching? I think that keeps you in games. Or do you want a team that can slug? I don't know what the answer is, but I know this. We are about to embark on like 3 weeks of absolute mayhem because I don't think of all the teams that are in the postseason, there isn't one team right now that you could say, hey, they're going to win the whole thing and feel really confident about it. There aren't. You could throw all these teams in a hat, pull out 2 teams, and it wouldn't surprise me from either league if any of these teams got to the World Series.
It really is incredible. And you mentioned you want to build a team based on pitching or slugging. I think we're going to see in the postseason, in the past, and in every sport, it's usually defense that elevates you in the postseason. But we'll see if that is the case. I want to go back to some of the things that you said previously here when you were on our podcast. Right. You mentioned how the Kansas City Royals are one of those teams that you think could obviously be good. We're very high on them, and we talked back in July, kind of going into August. It's the Kansas City Royals. It's the Baltimore Orioles. You said you had some concerns about that, but you also had them making the World Series back in our first podcast. It's Kansas City and Baltimore in the wild card round. I think one of the most entertaining matchups. Where do you see that going?
I do. I like the Royals starting pitching. Lugo's been a great guy. He might have been pound for pound the best free agent signing. I know a lot of people want to talk about Yamamoto, but I think the 2 best pitchers that signed were Imanaga for the Cubs and Seth Lugo. Lugo had a marvelous year. The thing that I'm going to give you a guy you got to watch, and I think he's starting game 1 for Kansas City. They have a lefty named Cole Ragans. This guy is the real deal. They acquired him at the trade deadline 2 years ago for Aroldis Chapman when Chapman was with the Rangers. This guy has turned himself into a really good pitcher. What I've heard now, Brady Singer is going to go to the bullpen. So Ragans will probably go game 1. Lugo will go game 2, and Waka probably will go game 3. If you're an Orioles fan right now, you got what you want. You've got a healthy Corbin Burns. He had a great month of September. Zach Eflin's been a godsend. I don't know if the Orioles would have hung on to the wild card spot without Zach Eflin. They're going to hit. Gunnar Henderson's had a little bit of shaky year defensively, led the American League in errors. Santander is a terrific player that unless you're an Orioles fan, you don't know a whole lot about the guy. I really like the Orioles. They can win the whole thing. I'm a little concerned about the back end of the bullpen. The bullpen isn't really solid. The Orioles, unlike a lot of the teams that are in it, they're going to need length out of their starting rotation because I don't think their bullpen is nearly as deep as a lot of the other teams that are in the postseason.
Yeah, the Yankees are another one. What are your thoughts on them, right? So they get the number 1 seed. And by the way, before we even get to the Yankees, what you mentioned about the Royals, not many people are talking about how good their pitching rotation is. Even all 4 of them, down to Brady Singer even at that starting pitcher 4 spot, all 4 of them have been very productive pitchers this year, all of which I think are playoff caliber starting pitchers. And then you look at their lineup, obviously led by Bobby Witt. They're incredible. I think that's going to be a fantastic series.
I do.
The bullpen, the Yankees have had to make some significant changes in the bullpen. You take away Clay Holmes. They've had to make some changes, even though they have been hot. What are your thoughts around the New York Yankees? They're the number 1 seed. Can they live up to that hype? Can they go to the World Series?
Yes, they can. And I'm going to tell you one reason why I believe. The last 2 starts from Garrett Cole, his second to last start, he went 9 innings in Oakland, gave up 1 run. In his last start, he was terrific. Pitched into the 7th inning. He was really good. It's really the first time all year that Garrett Cole looked like the Garrett Cole of 2023. This was a kind of a bad first half for him. He had the issue with his elbow. He starts the year on the IL. I think he had to pitch his way into shape. Heel has been very good. The key to the Yankees, in my opinion, is what they get out of Carlos Rodon. Won 18 games. He had a great bounce back year this year. So I think the Yankees are more than likely. I know they're going to go Cole game 1. They may go heel in game 2 and save Rodon for game 3. Stroman more than likely is going to be relegated to the bullpen, a guy that can eat up some innings. Listen, anytime you have Judge and Soto, the problem I see is this. Aaron Judge, I will be shocked when the playoffs start if he gets anything to hit. You got to pitch around this guy. I mean, you cannot give him a chance to beat you. I was amazed towards the end of the year about how many teams decided to, hey, I want to try to pitch to this guy. He is the best hitter in the game of baseball right now. And for me, the whole key to the Yankees is the pitching going to hold up, and the guys that hit behind Judge are going to have to perform because their Judge isn't going to get very many pitches to see.
Yes, and again, when you have two superstars like Aaron Judge and Juan Soto, the other pieces, they can somewhat fall into place where you're already going to be put in that contention level, and that is the best part about the New York Yankees. They have those stars. You mentioned in our previous podcast you were concerned about the LA Dodgers. They're the one seed on the other side. What are you thinking in regard to LA? And by the way, let's talk about it right now. Shohei Ohtani, 50-50 season, incredible. He's also up there for best hitter in baseball. You think Ohtani alone with this team?
No.
Series after all their postseason?
Chase, if I'm a Dodgers fan right now, I'm finding my good luck seat, my good luck charm, anything that you feel. The Dodgers starting rotation is in shambles right now, right? Jack Flaherty is their best pitcher. Clayton Kershaw's not going to pitch. Walker Buehler hasn't been the same. Bobby Miller, who they had big expectations for, has had a miserable year. It's Jack Flaherty, and Yamamoto's only a few starts back coming off the IL. I don't know where they're going to get, but I will say this with the Dodgers. We don't talk about it enough. Their bullpen, they have 5 or 6 guys in the back end of that bullpen that can shut you down. So for the Dodgers, they're going to play the kind of game where they get their starter out in the 4th or 5th inning, with the exception of Flaherty, and they're going to unleash all those guys in the bullpen. If I'm a Dodgers fan right now, I'm worried. And I know this is a bold statement, and it might, you might raise your eyes. I wouldn't be shocked if the Dodgers get bounced in the first round, because I just don't know if they have enough pitching. I don't. And I think when you face swing and miss pitching in the postseason, Freddie Freeman rolled his ankle with a couple days left in the season. They say he's going to be 100%. But if Ohtani and Betts don't do anything, they're in trouble.
Yeah, the Dodgers, we've seen also their previous postseason success. They won in 2020. We talked about kind of the legitimacy of that last time. I don't think you can judge the season off a 60-game sample size. But with the Dodgers, they haven't succeeded in the playoffs as much otherwise, right? They were the 1 seed last year as well, and then they fell to Arizona. A team I think they could lose to is a team in their division, a wild card team. That's the San Diego Padres. We mentioned you were shocked that they went all in again at the trade deadline. Clearly something is they're one of the best teams since the beginning of August time. You think the Padres are a team that, again, I think every team that can get into the playoffs, of course, can make it. We saw that with Arizona, but do you think they have a legit, okay, if they get out of the wild card round, they can beat the Los Angeles and the Philadelphia and the
Right now, the San Diego Padres are the most dangerous team in the postseason. I'm going to give you a couple of reasons why. I love their starting pitching. Dylan Cease has been great. Joe Musgrove has thrown the ball great. Yu Darvish has come back off the IL. He's thrown the ball great. Their bullpen is the best bullpen in baseball. If Machado and Jackson Merrill, who it's going to be between he and Paul Skeens, who wins National League Rookie of the Year. If the Padres get any offense at all, they can win the whole thing. I picked the Phillies and the Astros, but you really could convince me, if you were a Padre fan, to take the Padres over the Phillies. I think the Padres and the Phillies are the best 2 teams in the National League, and I really feel that the Yankees and the Astros right now are the best 2 teams in the American League. Now, that doesn't mean that any of those 4 are going to get there, but I think on paper, they're the surest picks to get to the World Series.
I think the teams that kind of go under the radar here, they won their division. It's Milwaukee, it's Cleveland. What are your thoughts on that? Maybe their strengths and weaknesses here in the postseason.
I hope you're not a Brewers fan. I had some really good years for the Brewers, and I hope you're not a Guardians fan. I don't see either one of those teams making an impact in the postseason. I don't like the Brewers starting pitching. Freddie Peralta has had an okay year. Frankie Montas has pitched better lately. They also have a very, very good bullpen. Devin Williams in the back end. They've got a bunch of guys in their bullpen that have been non-roster invitees, guys that have been released, sent down. They have put together a strong bullpen. With the Guardians, love their bullpen. You could say the Guardians and the Padres might have the best 2 bullpens in baseball. I'm very concerned about the Guardians starting pitching. I don't know if they have enough. I know they want to get their bullpen involved as early and as often as they can. I just don't know if you can win like that consistently if all of your bullpen guys aren't firing. That's why I would be surprised if the Brewers and the Guardians moved on, but that's just my opinion.
100%. I think also with the Guardians, they were such a hot hitting team early in the season. You've seen kind of Kwan slow down a little bit. You've seen even Ramirez slow down a little bit compared to his outstart. So this team just hasn't been, I feel like, as consistent in the second half as they were in the first half. Look, anything can happen in the MLB postseason. We've been talking about all of these different teams. Who do you see as those main four contenders? Who will be in the American League and National League Series, Championship Series, and then who you see? And then we'll talk about the World Series. But for now, who do you see?
Okay. My guess is I didn't like the Astros going into June, but I like the Astros now. They've got a big question. Yordan Alvarez has had some issues with the knee. He finished the year. He didn't play the last series of the year. They say he's going to be healthy. Anytime you have Bregman and Altuve, you've got a big shot in their lineup. And that outfielder, Tucker, is a really good player too. They're battle-tested. They've been to the League Championship Series like 7 of the last 8 years. You can pencil them into the AL Championship Series. They, to me, are a dangerous team. And I don't know why, Chase, but I keep harping back on the Philadelphia Phillies. I love Zach Wheeler. Christopher Sanchez has thrown great. Aaron Nola is a really good baseball pitcher in the month of October. Love the lineup. Harper's had a little bit of a down year. Schwarber's gotten hot. The key for me to the Phillies, Nick Castellanos. He's hot and cold. He's hit and miss. When he's hot, he's white hot. When he's missed, he swings and misses a lot. I think he's the key for the Phillies. I like their bullpen. I don't love their bullpen. I thought when they acquired Estevez from the Yankees, from the Angels at the trade deadline, it helped their bullpen immensely. I just think when I look at it right now, the Astros seem to be the hot team. They've got experience. Framber's throwing the ball really well right now. I thought when they acquired Kikuchi, that was a huge get for them. I just look at the Phillies and I look at the Astros, and to me, they have the least amount of questions that need to be answered.
I think that's really what you look at here when you look at the MLB postseason. Sometimes, I think all of these teams at one point, I've said to myself, okay, this team can definitely win the World Series. They have the talent to do that. They have the potential to do that. But the Phillies don't have any question marks. The Astros don't have any question marks. That's why I'm siding with you. I have the Astros over the Orioles in the American League. I have the Phillies over the Padres in the National League. So that's what I have. And then I have the Phillies over the Astros. I have the Phillies winning the World Series. I think that team's great. You said back in July, you thought the Phillies were the most well-constructed roster in the MLB. You still have them beating Houston, or does the experience have the advantage?
Have you been reading my notes that I make every day at MLB Network? Because I see it the same way you do. I see the Phillies winning in 7 games. I think it's going to be a great World Series. I just think the Astros are going to will themselves. They're going to get there. This is probably the last year of Alec Bregman. He's a free agent at the end of the year. I think he's going to be hungry. They're getting healthy at the right time. And I just think the Phillies are I was almost happy that the Phillies struggled a little bit at the end of the year, because I think the Phillies play better when everybody doubts them. I think last year was a huge wake-up call. I did a game for MLB Network a couple of weeks ago. I did the Phillies at Milwaukee, had a chance to talk to a lot of guys on the team, and I was surprised at how many bitter, still mad at what happened last year when the Diamondbacks went to Philadelphia, won Game 6 and Game 7 to go to the World Series, because I thought the Phillies had the best team, and I don't think they're going to take it for granted this year. I think they're angry. I think they remember what happened last year, Game 6 and 7, and I think the Phillies are going to come back with a vengeance.
I think they will too. They were one of the only teams where, like, when they clinched the postseason, they didn't really seem to be happy. I actually am on the same page as you right now. I think the Philadelphia Phillies win the World Series. Yeah, Plesac, before we wrap this up, I mean, we've talked about so much currently, and I think it's awesome. We all love the MLB playoffs. What are you most excited for? Is it the crazy hitting? Is it the pitching? Is it the long series? What are you most excited for in this MLB postseason?
I'm excited. I think the one thing I'm really looking forward to, I want to really find out how good Tarek Skubal is of the Tigers. I think we're going to find out. Not a lot of people, unless you really follow baseball. He won the Triple Crown, right? Wins, losses, strikeouts. He and Chris Sale. But I think America is going to finally figure out how good this Tarek Skubal is. And I think if he has a postseason like I think he's going to have, people around the country are going to go like, man, I never heard of that guy. That guy's really good. Tarek Skubal, to me, I hope this postseason is his coming out party.
That's amazing, Dan Plesac. Thank you so much. Best of luck this MLB postseason with all of your coverage. You said it's your busiest and most fun time of the year. We wish you the best of luck. We'll be watching you on the MLB Network. Thank you so much.
Hey, why don't we do this like once a week? If you want an update on the postseason, let's do this once a week. Why not?
Let's do it. Why not? You know what?
I'm in.
Well, let's talk afterwards and figure out the details. I would love that. Dan, again, thank you. Thank you so much. Yeah.
Consider it done, Chase. Over and out.
Consider it done. Over and out. Dan Plesac, thank you so much. The audience, thank you so much for listening. It's the MLB postseason. We all love it. We're going to wrap it up here from Chase Sports alongside Dan Plesac. That's on the other side. I'm your host, Chase Todron, and we will see you next time right here from Chase's Sports News.